Don't let Trump nuke a hurricane. Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle, and this Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, no, this isn't something from Frank Fleming. This is actually a House Resolution 7505 by Representative Sylvia Garcia, a Democrat of Texas, who has actually submitted this House resolution to prohibit, and I quote, to prohibit the president from deploying any strategic weapon such as a nuclear bomb for purposes of altering weather patterns or addressing climate and for other purposes. The modifier there is unclear as to which it refers to. But in any case, this is a bill which currently has mustered 0 co-sponsors and is not on the calendar for discussion in any committee, but was seriously submitted by the Congresswoman, who, by the way, you pay $174,000 a year to do her job, to prevent President Trump from nuking a hurricane, because it was reported in Axios that Trump has on multiple occasions, according to anonymous insider sources, talked to top officials in the administration about the possibility of diverting, deflecting, or destroying weather systems as they move across the Atlantic Ocean to keep them from getting to the United States, perhaps with a nuclear bomb. Stephen Green, it just makes me wonder, because I learned in the course of my research for this that it's actually not illegal currently for the president to nuke a hurricane. And I wondered if there are other things that it's not illegal for the president to do that we should be concerned about. And what is your level of anxiety over the possibility that President Trump may not only just nuke a hurricane, but after we've named it, possibly with a female name?
Or a name of color.
So there's a lot to dig into here, Scott. So I'll try and take these one at a time. Although
it's funny, when I saw the topic, I thought quite the opposite. But go ahead.
You know, I think we should be admiring the president for his restraint, which is not usually one of his strong suits. Because as it turns out, as I have just learned from this important piece of upcoming legislation, it has been within Donald Trump's legal authority for 3.5 years now to change the weather through thermonuclear explosions. And as far as I'm aware, he's only done this, a handful of times so far?
I don't know if the White House puts out a press release.
We know of.
Yeah, I don't think he's nuked more than 5 or 6 hurricanes since he was sworn into office on January 20th. Yeah, 2017.
It's 5 more than his predecessor.
And, you know, this is a guy who tends to speak off the cuff. He goes onto Twitter and says or retweets sort of outrageous things. But he has shown remarkable restraint in his use of thermonuclear weapons to control the weather. And I think we need to laud our president for this. When it comes to the actual legislation itself, I think it's time, really, that the president's authority to control the weather through thermonuclear explosions receives some kind of congressional oversight. Now, I realize President Trump has shown remarkable restraint, not just for himself, but really for any president with this broad authority to set off nuclear explosions at will to do things like control the weather. But this lack of congressional authority really speaks to the abdication of its responsibilities that we've seen Congress do for the last, really since the beginning of the progressive era. So if this legislation represents the first branch of our federal government taking back some of its authority, taking back some of its power to control the weather through thermonuclear explosions from the executive branch, as the founders envisioned, I should add, then I say it's about time.
Now, Bill Whittle, as you've just heard, Stephen Green has used many words, and some of them with multiple syllables. But I ask you, do you think if the president does deploy a nuclear weapon against a hurricane, that he should first go to Congress and seek an official declaration of war against the weather system?
Could you just read that one little paragraph from the legislation that you read earlier?
You might think this is a paragraph, but this is actually the title of the bill.
Oh, okay.
This is the longest headline in the history of headlines.
I just want to see what kind of legal wriggle room he might have.
Yes. So this is, and I didn't read all the codicils and the heretofores and whereafters, but it says to prohibit the president. This is a resolution to prohibit the president from deploying any strategic weapon, such as a nuclear.
Hold it right there. Hold it right there. Strategic weapon, eh? So tactical nukes are on the table, apparently.
only
hundreds, perhaps thousands. There's no limit on the number of tactical nukes that we could use against these weather systems, if I read this legislation correctly. And therein lies the fatal loophole, which spells the end of this effort to control the president's freedom of action. So that's the first thing.
Or even tactical non-nuclear weapons like Bradley fighting vehicles.
Or just a whole lot of fuel air explosives. Who knows? So my first point is tactical nuclear weapons still on the table, and that may be enough to do them if you throw a couple of thousand tactical nuclear weapons at something. It's practically as good as a strategic weapon. That's number one. Number two, and I know this sounds funny, but I'm serious about this. I really, truly am. Would it work? I mean, I don't think it would. But I'm not 100% sure why.
Maybe we need to try.
I'll tell you why, Bill.
Because
that meteorologists have said that because even like a nuclear bomb to us sounds like a lot of force, but some of these weather systems have such multiple megatonnage that it's as if a nuclear bomb were going off every 20 seconds. So there's more force in the storm than would be in the kind of nuclear bomb that we could explode in such a thing.
Well, this is why I'm saying I'm not sure. I certainly know enough about weather, and having lived in Florida for quite a long time, that hurricanes are powered by heat from the ocean, that the warmer the water is. If you raise the temperature of the water by 3-4 degrees, you multiply the power of the storm quite significantly. But what happens if you raise the temperature of the water by 8,000 degrees? What happens then? We don't know. Would it be a superstorm? I don't know. Be cool to watch. But my point is, what if it worked? Because if it worked, right, not only would we save money in terms of multiple millions, billions of dollars in terms of major storm striking, but my feeling is if it worked, all we would have to do is to nuke 2 or 3 of these things to establish the deterrence. And once it was clear that any hurricanes that cross, let's say, a certain line of longitude, they're just going to, the second they cross that line, it's like a tripwire, you're going to see the number of hurricanes just plummet.
We've sent a message.
There'd be 400 or 500 any given year if it weren't for the fact that we have the Air Force out there and conventional weapons. But if you were to nuke 4 hurricanes consecutively, I think the hurricane problem in this country would be over.
You know, the whole reason I bring this up, it seems like it's a silly topic, but what really struck me about it was the fact that, in fact, you are paying somebody $174,000 a year to write bad stand-up comedy. This is a person who's allegedly the representative of the people in her district, and she's literally thinking, first of all, the president denies, I forgot to say this, the president denies that he made the remarks that Axios says he made. And, the unnamed sources, I guess, are reluctant to name themselves and provide evidence that the president actually said this. But whether he said it or not, the fact that there's some congresswoman out there who's listening to offhand remarks and saying, oh, my goodness, what if he actually uses a nuke to try to stop a hurricane and doesn't tell anybody about it? We better make a law. Just tells me that there are people now in the most significant offices in the land crafting legislation that will affect 330 million people who have no seriousness at all. Now, to compound her lack of seriousness, Representative Garcia is actually, Sylvia Garcia of Texas, is actually also signed on to a letter where some 80 members of the House and the Senate have signed a letter, not legislation, mind you, but a letter basically saying that President Trump should not resume explosive nuclear testing, something that the United States has allegedly not engaged in since 1992, and that this would be a bad signal to our allies and our enemies alike. And my favorite part of it, though, was the suggestion that if we resume nuclear testing, it may send a signal to our enemies that we're not confident that our nuclear bombs work. because we have to test them. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have an opportunity to vote for Representative Garcia or any of her fellow stand-up comedy writers, I would recommend that you give careful consideration to what you're investing your $174,000 in. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members for making Right Angle possible.